Hello, friends, and welcome back to Doug Reads with Friends. I'm Doug. This is my podcast. And on this podcast, I invite some of my really wonderful, incredible, amazing friends from around the world to come on and have a conversation about their life, about our friendship, and, importantly, about a book that they've chosen. We both read that book in advance of recording the podcast and then have a conversation in part about that book. But the book is also in many ways just an excuse for us to have a conversation about our lives and our friendship. On today's podcast, we have Hazel Raja. I have known Hazel since 2013 when she first interviewed me to work at NYU Abu Dhabi, where she was then the director of the Career Development Center. We got to work together for about 6 years before she left to go back to the United States. You'll hear us talk about our friendship, about what it's like to be friends with your boss, about her work in career development, my friendship with her husband, Jay, and then about the book that she chose, the book that you can see here over my shoulder, This American Woman by the comedian Zarna Garg. A very funny book, a book that we had a lot of thoughts about, including about how we think about that book in terms of career development and the impact that it had on each of us reading it, Hazel as an Indian American woman and myself as a white man, and the various perspectives we brought to that. I hope that you'll enjoy our conversation of This American Woman by Zarna Garg. How do you think about and balance being a supervisor with being a friend?
I think that in Abu Dhabi in particular, it was really important to build a relationship with your team and individuals on the team because there was so much at stake in the sense of like possibly losing staff, right? When you're bringing people over, you are creating a relationship with them in order for them to want to come and then want to stay. As you know, in Abu Dhabi, you don't just do your job, you do a lot of jobs. You spend a lot of time with off campus, on campus, evenings, all sorts of different events. And so you want to know that you're going to want to spend time with these people that you're bringing from abroad to the UAE to work. And then as you start to get to know people, I've always enjoyed getting to know individuals on my team just because I feel like I can manage expectations, performance, projects a lot better when I know what their strengths are and kind of what they're navigating as individuals.
And how do you think about that now that you're back in California? Does that change your perspective?
When I first came back to California, I expected the same kind of relationship with people. And what I realized, what I received was people not wanting that because their boundaries were different. And so, or their expectations or their experiences with, previous bosses may not have allowed for that relationship building. And so I think now I've gotten to the point where people are trusting me. But in the very beginning, there was definitely a wall. There was definitely, this feeling of like, why does she want to know so much about me? Why does she keep asking me how I'm doing? Like, why does she want to know who I am? But I think it's funny because I've also not expected as much of staff members in the ways that I had kind of developed those relationships in Abu Dhabi. But I also think it's just because Abu Dhabi was a different environment. We spent so much time with each other. I mean, the fact that you know Jay, right? Like, I mean, it's and
Absolutely.
you hung out with Jay, and Jay actually said to me, he was like, "Can you ask him how Formula One was? I want to talk to him too." And I was like, "You know what? Okay, you'll have your own time, but like right now, we're not doing Formula One. You and Natasha have to go upstairs."
Trying to think a little bit about whether friendship between a boss and a supervisor is a good thing, it's a bad thing. I mean, obviously, I think it's probably a little bit of a mixture of everything. I think it did allow us to be really, really honest with one
Yeah,
another. And that could extend to, what's going on outside of work, which always then
yeah,
impacts
yeah,
work as
yeah,
well and how you show up
yeah.
at work. I mean, you saw me through a divorce, some difficult times of being a single father and supporting me through that. But then there were also, there was a moment I think we both remember when we had a big disagreement. We were yelling at each other in your office.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
And I look back on that now, I think we were probably both wrong in that situation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that sometimes when that meshing of friendship becomes challenging because it's like, okay, you walk out of the office and then you're like, hey, okay, so what are you having for dinner
Yeah,
tonight?
exactly. Yeah,
Like, and I think that that's harder when you are friends with people that you work with because somehow it feels more personal. Like Garvin just had a baby and I'm celebrating from afar and, just so excited for him and Melody and the season in life that they're in. And I just think to myself, like, I don't know if I've ever had a boss. I mean, I have. I've had bosses that have cared about me that deeply, but I haven't had a lot of bosses that have cared for me that deeply, where they care so much that like they want to know when I have a kid or, that kind of stuff. And I think that makes
afterwards,
all the
like
difference.
years afterwards.
Yeah, like when I'm not working with them anymore, like that they would stay in touch and want to know and celebrate all the things that I'm still going through.
Yeah. What do
Right.
you think makes a good boss? Like what do you well, other than let me ask it more specifically, what do you
Mhm.
think makes you a good boss? What are your kind of characteristics or personality types or things that you do that you think I mean, I think you're really, really good at being a supervisor. It's like how?
Wow. So I just did this personality, like a leadership personality test. And one of the things that came up as their version of a weakness was that I will make decisions based on the individual and the situation. And I don't have a flat response, which surprised me because I was like, I thought I was pretty consistent, but I guess I'm not. And I was rethinking it a little bit. And I was like, it's because do have a relational approach to the people. I don't just see the situation at hand, I see the whole package, and therefore I make a decision based on that whole package, not just that situation. And I think that actually works really well.
Where did you learn to do this? Did you have great bosses yourself or how did you get to where you are today?
I think I've learned from what's not happened, to be honest with you. I've definitely had some good bosses, but I think that it's more about what I wish people would have thought through with me when I'm employing with my supervisory style is like, okay, you know what? Like if they're just judging me or evaluating me based on X and not recognizing all the stuff that I carry, that sucks, really. It kind of sucks that they're not recognizing all that I'm navigating. So I've kind of always kind of kept that in the back of my head. It's just trying to see the whole individual and not just the person or their kind of title or their portfolio.
Do you do that when you're relating to your bosses as well? Do you try to create friendships with the people who supervise you?
I kind of feel it out. It depends on the energy that they're giving off. To be honest with you, in Abu Dhabi, especially because we spent so much time with each other, there were definitely blurred lines where I felt like I remember one boss asking, why don't we go on vacation together? And I was like, what?
Maybe a step too far.
No, like we can go on a work trip together, but I'm not going on vacation with you. That all being said, there are individuals in my life that I consider my mentors who were my boss and are people that I still lean on and banter and like, very much part of each other's lives. And it's not just the work, obviously, because I don't work for them anymore. But I mean, I have a boss now. I can be very playful with them during our one-on-ones. But literally, like once I walk out that door, like I have nothing to do with them until my next one-on-one, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
But it's something I've gotten used to.
Let's talk a little bit about the work that you do. Why do you love career development work?
So I love career development because I feel like there's a journey that students go on and they're in such a pivotal point in their lives, college students, that to help them from this state of I have no idea what I want to do. And that's what I actually appreciate about liberal arts students as well is the fact that there's such a breadth of opportunity there, but there's not a clear pathway. And for some students, that's a real struggle and a real kind of sticking point. And so to help them from that real kind of messy stickiness of the unknown to a place where there's confidence and real kind of connection and real excitement for what comes next is this arc that I love to be part of. Working with college age students when they're on this journey. And we've talked about this before. And I actually reused something that you shared with me when you first, I think you interviewed and you said this good clay, students being good clay, right? And like NYU has really good clay. NYU Abu Dhabi has really good clay. And Pomona College has really good clay. And when you work with students who are just so amenable and like willing and open, just there's a really good, strong starting point. It makes the job so much more joyful.
One thing that I think can be a challenge for people in your position as the head of the Career Development Center is that you get into this because, as you said, I want to work with the clay. I want to get in there. I want to get my
Hmm.
hands dirty.
Hmm.
I want to mold. I
Hmm.
want to shape. I
Hmm.
want to create.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then you end up as the head of the Career Development Center and you're thinking about budget and you're thinking about personnel management and you're thinking about hiring and you're thinking about strategy and you're thinking about working with the vice president that you work for, and you don't actually get to talk with students that much.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that what you're discovering as well? And how do you feel about that?
That's a very easy slope to fall down in the sense of like not having any student contact. So I'm the main point of contact for the international students office. And therefore, I have all the international students largely coming to me for advice and guidance. And especially right now, there's just so much that they're navigating. And so I get a lot of student contact because of that. But I've had to really ensure that that's something I hold on to. There are days, there are weeks where I'm like, I don't have time for this. I have to get the budget in. I have to do this. I got performance reviews. I've got whatever. But I never regret it. I never regret that time that I've been able to spend with students. They actually reminds me of why I'm there and what the budget is for, why we have a program in place. Why am I asking this donor for money? Like it's for these students. And so by having that student contact, it really allows me to kind of ensure that I'm talking about things that I know about and not just what I think people need kind of thing.
I know Pomona as a phenomenally great small liberal arts college, a top 5 small liberal arts college. If you asked me who are the students who go to Pomona, what do we call Pomona students? Pomonites, Pomoners, Pomonans?
Sage hens.
Sage
Sage
hens.
hens.
Okay. I wasn't going to come up with that one. If I were to ask you to define what makes a sage hen or what makes a student at Pomona different than students at Amherst or Williams or even Pitzer or Claremont, how do you define a Pomona student? How do you define a sage hen?
I would say that what makes Pomona students different is this real desire and appreciation for the liberal arts. So they're kind of real desire to find ways to connect their interests together, whether it's art history and economics or, neuroscience and Africana studies. Like it's just their willingness and want and desire to pull things together to make them work. And they're kind of enterprising ability to do so is something that can't be disregarded. I would also say that when you're at a small selective liberal arts college, that you have a bunch of leaders on your hands. The number of times that I pick up a resume and I look at the resume and I'm like, how is it possible that this 18-year-old who just started college has done all of this? They're just so impressive. They're all leaders in their own way. It's just wild how many things that they've been involved in.
Do you miss living abroad? Do you miss living in Abu Dhabi specifically?
I do. I do. Every so often, I'm like, why did we come back down here? Especially right now.
Especially this given
Yeah, especially
political
right
moment,
now.
right?
Oh my gosh, especially right now. I do. There's something mundane about living so I live in Los Angeles County, but I live in the suburbs of the suburbs in LA. And it feels very monotonous at times. You do the same 13-minute drive each direction. Do drop off the kid, you get to campus, you park, it's hamster wheel situation where you're literally just doing things every single day in the same manner. And there's not a lot. I mean, the thought of traveling is just such a pain to get anywhere from the West Coast. The idea of like doing a weekend getaway, you like want to go to Vegas, you want to go to San Francisco, where do you want to go? Because the amount of effort that it takes to get anywhere is just ridiculous. And I miss that. I miss in Abu Dhabi being able to say, let's go to Rome, let's go to Sri Lanka, let's go out for a nice meal and it be a nice meal and not just kind of like Chili's. Just being able to experience the breadth of opportunities that exist. I mean, you could go to the Louvre, it's like down the street from campus, to Ferrari World, to, but it's just, there's so much there.
Do you see yourself going abroad again in the future, or with family, do you see yourself probably staying in the US?
I think I came back at the right time in my kind of external family's life, and I have aging parents, or I had one of them has since passed, but and just being able to be close by was something that I will never regret. And I think part of it is also like having my child have what I consider a normal childhood, like they community sports, like things that just don't feel like it's a five-star experience. It's like, dirty grass, muddy grass, kind of thing, not Emirates Palace grass. I think that is something that I really wanted to create for my child. And yeah, so she's thriving in that. But my Jay and I often talk about like, we should look here, should look there. And we went to Australia last winter break and fell in such a deep love for Australia. And I immediately was like, I need to look up jobs in Australia because that's somewhere I would totally go. And even Natasha was like, "Yeah, let's go. I'm ready to pack my bag." So I think that there is definitely a stint or two left in us. I think it has to be the right stint.
How old is Natasha now?
She's going to be 9 next month.
9. Okay,
Yeah,
enormous.
yeah,
Now I saw you becoming a mom, and she was
yeah.
she was what, 3 years old when you left Abu Dhabi
Correct.
then. So, how has becoming a mom and then being a mom for the last 9 years changed how you approach your job, your work, how you think about work?
I definitely prioritize the work-life balance a lot better than I did previously. It kind of being a mom forces you to do that, just in the sense of like, she has been at school for 9 hours. I don't want her to be there anymore. And so I'm gonna pick her up. And sometimes like at 3:30, like when she typically gets out of school, I'll just go there, pick her up, and bring her back to my office just because I want her to have just time with me. I think part of it is just this realization of like where just like my team, I have many hats and I have a whole invisible backpack of things and people that I take care of. And so for me, she has allowed me to really recalibrate my idea of work-life balance and really embrace it in a way that creates kind of space for me to just switch off. I get home and I don't look at my phone. Around 8 o'clock when she goes to bed, I kind of check again. But from like 5:30 until about 8, like, it's like, I'm not looking at anything unless it's a recipe for something.
Good for you. I have said a bunch of times, I am so glad that I did not have to parent in the age of cell phones, not because of my kids, but because of me. Because especially when there's so much time when they're like on a playground and you're just sitting on the side watching them. And with kids before in the iPhone era, you
Mhm.
just got to sit there and watch them. And there's great value in that, but it's also
Oh, yeah.
stupid levels of boring.
Yeah.
And I would 100% have been in my phone and not paying any attention to my children when they were
Yeah.
climbing around on the playground,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
would've been bad. I'm glad I didn't
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
choice because I absolutely would have made that choice, and I'm really, really happy that instead I was forced to be there and engage and wait for those magical moments that do happen, those serendipitous moments that do happen with them, rather than looking at something stupid on my phone that's absolutely worthless.
Yeah. Well, we talk about that all the time because, we go to soccer games. My daughter, Natasha, plays soccer, and the number of parents that are sitting on the sidelines with their phones, like, in their face, and every so often, Natasha will look up at me, like, she'll be playing or she'll make a move or whatever it is, and she'll look at me, and I'm watching her, and it's like, I feel like there's this connection of, like, my mom is watching me. She's not just on her phone. I'm not saying that I don't always have my phone because I'm for sure.
Sure.
Hands on heart. I definitely have my phone out sometimes because it's boring. It's stupid boring. I will watch her. She's only gonna want my attention for a few more years at this point. She's 9. She's already like, "Oh, I don't wanna wear that," or whatever it is, and so I already feel like time is not on my side with this, and so as much as I can, just be present with her. I'm trying to because
Yeah.
I know, and I only have one.
It's the craziest part of having kids is like they're so deep in your life and then they grow up and they move out. What? Like
I
now with
know.
two daughters who are, one's out of college, one's a junior in college, but that they don't, I mean, it's inconceivable when they're 9 years old that they're not
Yeah.
going to live with you someday,
Right.
right? Like that
Right.
they're going to go
Right.
away, they're going to have their own lives, but they actually do.
Yeah.
And you can't say, oh, you have to savor every moment and you have to love every moment because there's parts of it as we both just said, that are crazy levels of boring or annoying or frustrating or whatever negative emotions you want to associate with it. But then they're gone. They're
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. They're
And it's
they're
not, parenting adults is very different. And, they're what they need and the amount of time it takes is very, very different. It has its own great pleasures. I mean, getting to know my children as adults, developing actual friendships with them, doing cool and
mm,
interesting things, hearing their
mhm,
opinions on the world, watching
mhm.
them make adult decisions is its own level of fascinating, but it's completely different than what you're going through now.
I know. Well, how old was Beatrice when she first moved to Abu Dhabi?
Beatrice was 10 and Emma was 12 when they first moved
Yeah.
here. Right. So
Yeah.
so Natasha is now
So,
almost the
yeah.
age. I hadn't put
Yeah.
that together. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, let's start talking about where this is ostensibly a book
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the book that you chose and we both read. Tell us a little bit about what book you chose and why you chose it.
Sure. I chose this American woman by Zerna Gerg. I chose this book because I had seen her Netflix special and I found her to be very funny. She is from the same part of India that my family comes from. And so some of the things that well, at least when she performed on this kind of Netflix special, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of blown away by how open she is because that's not typical of Gujarati women. And so I wanted to get to know her a little bit more. And so that's why I picked it. And I was also thinking to myself, I'm not going to lie. I was like, Doug's dating an Indian woman. He probably needs to know a little bit more about Indian women and where they come from. And no offense to the fact that you've been with Anjana for a very long time now, but in my mind, I was like, he still probably needs to know more stuff.
Oh, there's
So,
always more to know.
um,
Absolutely.
so I was like, this could be helpful. This could be a little bit of a helpful tool for him too. And so during COVID, she kind of blew up then. And I think it's because of my algorithm. She kept popping up on my feeds. And so I started to kind of watch her and she always kind of made me laugh. And she said things that I was like, wow, she's pretty cool. She says really cool things. And so her book was really insightful.
So how would you describe this book? And like, if you're going to like write the blurb for the book, right? What, or you're going to give somebody a few sentences or a paragraph on what this book is, how do you describe it?
Zarna Garg is a comedian. Her memoir is a lot about her life, her childhood, kind of how she came to the United States, how she fell in love, how she met her partner, and like raising kids. So it's a little bit of a lot of topics were covered in this autobiography, but it helps us understand how she opened doors for herself to become the comedian that she is. And she's like award winning. She's hilarious. She's got this Netflix special. She credits Kevin Hart in kind of that journey that she went on. And yeah, so she's definitely hilarious.
Who do you think the audience for this book is? I was trying to think about this a
Yeah.
bit as I was reading. Like, who do you think she had in mind as she was writing?
I think it might be someone like me, actually, in the sense of like, especially Indian people. I'm generalizing here. Being a comedian is not necessarily a path that people would ever say you should be a comedian because you're so funny. Like it's like you're funny, but find a real job kind of thing. And so I think there's a little bit of judginess behind all that. And so for myself, like I was curious to know kind of how did she get into this? How is she so funny? Like what happened? And it's interesting that so many comedians have had such a dark childhood or dark past. And I knew that in the back of my head. So I was like, I wonder what was so hard about her life. And so I was curious.
To me, there was a lot of translating back and forth, right? Because
Yeah.
you can see that there's
Yeah.
obviously she lives in the US, her work is in the US. She talks at the very end of the book about going to India and doing a show in India for the first time and how scared she was to go to India, but that she also clearly has a massive following in India as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I felt like a
Yeah.
lot of the book was translating India for Americans and America for Indians, and then finding the humor at the
Yeah.
intersection of the
Yeah.
two. I mean, one of the parts that made me laugh the most was when she was talking about, and we can talk about this from I want to hear your thoughts on it
Mm.
from a career
Mhm.
development perspective as well. But she was talking about kind of, okay, American kids, go find your passion, go find your thing. Meanwhile, Indian kids are going to be over here running the world, right? Like, go
Oh, yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
new hamster wheel. Go figure out your new, like,
Yeah.
go be an artist. That's fine. Indian kids are going to do math and be CEOs, which I thought was just a great way to be thinking about the differences of what success means and how Indians versus Americans can think of those things. So how did that resonate with you as someone
Yeah.
who is Indian American
Yeah. Yeah.
and thinks about career development all the time?
I found humor in that too, because I was like, yeah, that's I could just I can envision people in my community saying something like that, right? Like, it's just such a realistic comment. I think for me, what I think is really interesting is that she doesn't hide behind some of her own feelings about, what success looks like. So when she talked about kind of getting her kids into the right schools and, making sure they did all the things to be able to get into the right schools and to get to be noticed. And I think there's a point in which she's a lawyer, she's done all these great things, and she's accomplished herself. And yet I feel like there is still an expectation of, regardless of the fact that she is a comedian, she's a really, really good and award-winning comedian doing amazing things. There is still this feeling of like, but my kids have to go into law or medicine or engineering. It's, even though she has carved her own path, she still wants to create this space for them to go through to the traditional places that Indian kids channeled towards. And as a career advisor, I find, I'm going to be honest, I find myself in that same dilemma of saying to other kids, you should pursue what you love, think about your skills, think about your interests, think about your values. And then with my own kid, I'm like, she's 9. But like, I'm like, why did you get a 97 on your math test?
What happened to
Why
the
did you
other
get
3%?
what went wrong here? Like, you know how to do this. What are we doing here? Like, what, do we need to do
I guess
drills?
we
Like,
got to
what's
get a
going on?
tutor for the other
I know, like,
3%.
so I find myself sometimes teetering between, I just want her to love education, want her to love to learn. And then I'm also like, what was your test? How did you do on your test?
What did you like about this book?
I thought it was funny. So she had like these funny quips throughout the story, which I thought was like really funny. Even like the parts that were like kind of dark, right? Like where she would talk about being homeless and moving from one house to the next, and just the hurt that must have felt, especially coming from that kind of house she came from, or hearing her brother's wife say things like she's eating us out of house and home. But she would find ways to kind of say something funny, in those moments too. And it was a perfect combination of, wow, she's navigating so much, but also making me giggle a little bit. Like, there's a part in the book where she talks about coming to the United States and how cold it was in Ohio in the wintertime. And then I realization of like the fact that she had left everything. She'd left everything. She was coming to the United States, and like, yes, it was really, really cold, but she was also navigating all this without anything really. Or she said something like $8 in my pocket, but 10,000 in my bank account. I left my country with $8 in my pocket and 10,000 in my bank account. So she finds ways to make it funny. Like, the realization of what she was going through is pretty deep.
She took a long time to find her path, right? As you said, she
Mm-hmm.
went to law school. She says she tried 15 different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So when you, as a career development professional, when you look at her career, what are the lessons that you take away from what made her successful or how she got where she is?
I think she's always been very driven. She's always found ways to like make things work, right? Whether she's bumping around people's houses in Mumbai to moving to the US, figuring out ways to stay in the country by pursuing graduate education, law school. And I think that just that hunger and that drive, and I think those pieces allowed for her to pivot in the ways that she has. Like, I was kind of surprised that she took the back seat when her husband wasn't doing his MBA program. And even though she was dabbling in his study groups and whatnot, I felt like it surprised me that she wasn't allowed to work, and yet, and I get that, but I was surprised that she didn't, because Indian people don't let rules like that stop them. And so that part that part kind of surprised me a little bit. And one of the things I would say is, if I didn't know she was a comedian, I didn't see it coming throughout her lifeline.
That's a really good point.
I mean, she was funny. Like, again, she was funny throughout. But like, at what point did somebody say you should be a comedian? And she said, "Yeah, I should." I don't know if she talked about that. But she did it. It wasn't in depth
She talks
because
a little bit about her kids encouraging her, and kind of she says, I had a loud mouth, I always had ideas.
yeah,
I always wanted to say things. I always had, an idea of needing to give people something. She talks about when she was homeless growing up.
yeah,
After her father kicks her out, she leaves when she's 14 years old to escape an arranged marriage. And that she always discovers, okay, I need to give people things. And then she talks about, I thought very movingly, how when she's up on stage, what she gives to an audience, but then also what she gets from an audience of the
yeah,
acceptance. But you're
yeah.
right. That's a really good point that I had not thought of. But if you didn't know that this story ends with her being an incredibly successful and like on a rocket ship to success comedian, right? I mean, she starts going to open mics, and within 10 months, she has an hour-long headlining
And
opportunity, which, like, I
yeah,
think most people, that takes 5 years, 10 years to
yeah,
have that type
yeah.
of success.
And during
And so,
COVID, right?
and during
And it
COVID,
was
right.
during COVID, yeah, when things are not, the opportunities are much more restricted. And maybe this was part of her life, like she made people laugh, and so she knew she was quite funny, and so that led to her foray into this. Like, that was one piece that I thought was
Yeah.
missing. I wish I would have heard a little bit more about how her humor was kind of appreciated and recognized throughout her life.
I wonder how we receive this book differently as an Indian American woman and as a white guy.
Yeah.
How do we start to explore that? How did you receive this as an Indian American woman? How did it resonate with you?
I loved it. I really, really loved her openness. I think she said some things, she made some comments about things that I totally just got, right? Like, I was like, yeah, totally understand
Is there
that.
an
Like,
example of that you
so
remember?
yeah, so when she was getting married and her mother-in-law was like, well, she was wearing glasses. She was like, "Oh my gosh, she wears glasses on top of everything else." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I could see that. I could see a mother or a grandmother or mother-in-law saying something like that." But I remember there was a situation, my when my brother was getting married, I must have been 21 years old, and I used to surf. And so before my mom left, because the wedding was in Canada, before my mom left for to get ready for this wedding, so she went 3 weeks before, and she's like, "No more surfing for you." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "You're getting too dark." And I said, "Come on, mom, you know." So she goes, of course I continue surfing. And then I get to Toronto for this wedding, and my mom, like, she as soon as she saw me, she was like, "Oh my God, we need to get like bleaching cream all over you." Because I was too dark. And she was like, I told you not to go in the water. I told you not to be in the sun." And she literally was like trying to like scrub the brown off of me. And there's situations of like the arranged marriage piece. Like, I was like, there's expectations when you get to a certain age that there's like people will start to notice, "Oh, she's 18 years old now. Like, she's almost of marital age. She should be seeing more." And that's very kind of common within the Indian culture. And so a lot of it was familiar to me.
For me, I think I received it certainly as a white American guy, but as you talked about at the beginning of this book conversation, as someone who is in love with and lives with and will be married to an Indian woman, and not Indian American, but Indian from India, lives in India,
Yeah.
proudly Indian woman. And there were parts where I would, that section that I alluded to earlier about education, for example, that I would go to Anjana and say, "Does this resonate with you? Like, is she exaggerating here? Does this resonate with you?" And she's like, "Oh no, 100% that resonates
Yeah.
with me." And that, she hears me talk about my work in career development and in advising students, and that I'm giving a very kind of Oprah song of your soul, listen to your bliss you follow your inner voice. And she's like, kids got to get money. They got to work. They got to get jobs. No wonder they're all majoring in econ and computer science. We do see those differences. And then I think anytime that you get an insight into someone else's life, that you get to spend some time in their world and understand where they've come from. And for
hmm
me also, the theme of gratitude, to me, one of the biggest themes in the entire book is just from start to finish. The acknowledgments are like 10 pages where
I
she goes
know.
on and on and on at the
I
end
know.
about how
Yeah.
much gratitude she feels
Yeah.
towards other people in
Yeah.
her life, and a gratitude towards the United States as well, and the
Yeah.
opportunities that she
Yeah.
had. She leads a very different life if she does not escape marriage to the king of glass of Mumbai, right?
I
Which
know.
is
I know.
one of the pathways
Yeah.
her life might have been heading
Yeah.
down.
That's the reality. I mean, I think that like you have to be defiant in order to achieve success. I think for women in India, you can't just go with what people ask of you. And I think that's the hard part, right? Like why do women in India have to be defiant in order to be successful? And I think that like she wasn't like if she didn't have all this worldwide success right now, I think that there would probably be like, well, it's because she didn't marry the guy from the glass company. Like part of me wonders whether or not some of it was exaggerated too, because I'm like, this is insane. Like, I know it happens, but like, it felt like so unreal. Like, it felt like, how
What is,
could the
are there
father
specific
like completely? Well, the father just completely dismissing her existence, and not even just after her mom died, but even before her mom died. Like it was like he didn't care for her at all.
Well, the thing about the father that really surprised me is that the book is dedicated to him, right? I mean, if
I
you
didn't
at
notice
the
that. I didn't even notice
yeah,
that.
the very beginning of it is to my father who taught me English, the language of success. And so much of the book is about escaping her father and escaping his plan for her, and then
Yeah,
maybe seeing him at some weddings, but never reconciling with him before he
yeah, yeah,
passes. And
yeah.
yet, I think towards the end, then also this feeling of gratitude towards him for pushing her to become who she became. And it's a very complicated relationship that I'm not sure that she ended up working through completely in the book.
I had not seen that she dedicated it to her father, but also maybe it's kind of like an F you. I do this without,
That's a
right?
very
Without
good
your
point.
support.
Yeah. You taught me
So
English, but that's it, Dad. And now look at where I
yeah,
am. No, that's
yeah,
that's really interesting. Let's talk about you as a
yeah.
reader just a little bit. Is reading a big part of your life?
It used to be. It used to be something that I like escaped through.
And now you have a 9-year-old.
And now I have a 9-year-old. I do a lot of audiobook. I had bought the book, but then I was like, who am I kidding? I'm not going to carry that around. So I ended up audiobooking and then I kind of went through most of the book through the audiobook. So the type of reader I am. So it's whatever catches my eye. So like now she made a reference to the fact that Kevin Hart had a kind of a dark life too. And I love Kevin Hart. He makes me laugh from my belly. So now I'm like, oh yeah, the book. It's like one of the things that I want to is get onto next. But I do a little bit of self-help stuff. I do a little bit of I laughed because like the last book I audiobooked was Britney Spears's audio, autobiography. So I clearly like celebrities books and learning about their lives. Maybe it's a sociology major in me
Yeah.
that wants to know a little bit more about people and their upbringings, but have a little bit of an eclectic taste in books.
So it sounds like you do a lot with audiobooks then. Do
I
you
do.
enjoy that? Do you do that in pieces? How do you do while you're 13-minute commuting each way? When do you do the
No, 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 no.
audiobooks?
So I started walking. So I usually go for like a 45-minute to 1 hour walk almost every day. That is kind of I pop in my earbuds and I listen to podcasts, books, whatever I feel like that day. Yeah, for some reason when I'm driving, I can't listen to a book or I can't listen to a podcast because I'm too focused on what I'm doing. But walking, I'm like, la 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 la. It just it just allows me to focus on what I'm hearing. So the other book I'm actually reading or listening to is Serena Wegman. She's the UK women's soccer team coach. So I got her book and I've been listening to her pathway to being the English soccer team Lionesses coach. So that's kind of fun because she's she's kind of a badass.
Mostly women. I've noticed, I mean, those 3 books or
Yeah.
audiobooks that you've mentioned are all women. Is that intentional on your part or?
Not intentional, but now I'm recognizing a theme too. Yeah, again, it goes back to the fact that if somebody's behaving a certain way or doing something that caught my attention, I want to know a little bit more about them as individuals. So that I tend to read more kind of nonfiction or biographies. Malala's on my list too. Her new book's on my list. I tend to kind of want to know a little bit more about kind of them as individuals.
Well, one thing that we try and do towards the end of each podcast is
Mhm.
to think about our friendship and where we might get to meet up next. I mean, we're
Yeah.
12 time zones apart right now. So it's been, I think, 6 years since we last saw one another. In the context of the book, maybe using the book as inspiration, where and when and how might we meet up next?
So, 2 things. First of all, I hope and I expect to be invited to your wedding.
Okay.
And that's if you're having a big wedding, of course. And then the second thing is we obviously have to go to a comedy show and somebody that we both would be excited to see because I do love comedy shows and I've only been to a small handful and I feel like that should be I spend a lot of money on musicians, so I might as well do the same for comedy. But yeah, I feel like we should go see a show together.
I'll come out to LA. There's got to be a ton of comedy shows in
Oh my
LA.
gosh, tons,
That would be
tons.
great fun.
Or we can meet somewhere else and then just make it a trip.
We can do an international trip. I'll travel with my boss.
That would be okay.
That would be okay. Former bosses allowed. Current bosses
Former
not
bosses
allowed.
are okay.
Well, Hazel, thank you so much for this. This was great fun. I'm so glad that we got to catch up and talk. And it was a great choice of a book, really fun book to read.
you.
And I really appreciate you coming on. And thanks for being my friend.
My pleasure. It was so good to spend this time with you.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed listening. I hope Hazel enjoyed recording that with me. You know, I started this podcast project really with a few goals in mind. The number one thing for me was just to get to reconnect with really wonderful friends that I haven't had a chance to talk to in a long time, and to get to read some books that I otherwise might not pick up. And this has absolutely fulfilled both of those desires for me. I am having so much fun reconnecting with my friends, talking with people, getting caught up with people, and reading books like this one that I never would have picked up otherwise. But I'm really glad that I got a chance to read. So thank you again to Hazel for making the time, for saying yes to this, and for choosing a really, really great book. For the next episode in early April, I will be talking with Dr. Lana Magoob. Lana is a member of the posse that I mentored when I worked at Grinnell College. You may not be familiar with the Posse Foundation, but it is one of my favorite organizations on the planet. Brought 10 of my absolute favorite people on the planet into my life. And I'm eventually going to have all 10 of them on. Lana will be the first of those 10. She has chosen a novel called Culpability by Bruce Holsinger. It's a terrific novel. It's a very quick read. It is compelling, very interesting, lots of secrets to be discovered in this book. I hope that you'll consider picking up a copy of Culpability and reading it in the next few weeks and then listening to that podcast when it comes out in early April. Music for Doug Reads with Friends from my friend, Erin Caffel. Please give her music a listen on Spotify and support her. And thank you, as always, to Erin for letting me use her music. If you have any thoughts or feedback or comments or just want to get in touch to discuss Doug Reads with Friends, you can always send me an email at dougreadswithfriends@gmail.com. I will read all of your messages. And look for Doug Reads with Friends on social media. If you are enjoying listening to this, consider commenting on it or sharing it with a friend. Great thing to do would be to get inspired by this podcast and reach out to your own friends. Maybe read a book with them. Thank you so much for listening to Doug Reads with Friends. Thank you for being my friend. Have a great day. See you in a couple weeks.